From the incredible missions like Clean House and Modern Warfare, the beautiful artistic polish of guns and Battlefield, to the gorgeous serenity of the rolling hills and Red Dead Redemption 2, one thing these games all have in common is their commitment to realism, and the realistic depiction of life as showcased through their art. Or do they? Are they actually realistic? Well, no. But that's a boring answer, so let's take a deep dive into the artistic definitions of realism and how video games trick you into thinking that they're actually realistic. First, let's get familiar with what realism in an artistic sense is. Obviously, it's making something look realistic, right? Well, you're on the right track, but realism in the art world refers to the attempt to portray the natural world without exaggeration, speculative, artificial, or supernatural elements. Well, yes, the concept of realism is in the most basic terms an attempt to make the most realistic work possible. In realism, the focus is trying to make a perception of the natural world, a focus on the beauty of nature and the natural order, the world as it is, flaws and all. Started in France in the 1840s, the realism movement aimed to reject the aspects of romanticism, a style we all talk about a little later, and sought to portray the ordinary, the social hierarchy of France at the time, shedding the ideal versions of the world in favor of what it is. Painters at the time were fascinated with the complexities of the new industrial age and societal change created between them. Realism is the rejection of the idea of idealism. Idealism, for our sake, is one of the most important topics we will discuss today. If you Google idealism, it'll give you a lot of nonsense that looks like this, but to bring idealism down to a more manageable and digestible, non-super long philosophical talk about what perceptions of reality are, idealism is the idea of portraying something idealistically, or the best possible light of it. Other ways it's been described is using the purest form of something, the best possible representation of it. Breaking out the root word ideal, we can easier paint a picture in our minds of the concepts that we're trying to portray with idealism. You may be asking yourself, if realism is a rejection of idealism, why is it so important in a discussion of realism? In a sense, as later artists begin to express in the turn of the century, in the modern art movement spearheaded by Impressionism, idealism and realism are one and the same. They are not competing ideas, but rather representations of the same forms, two sides of the same coin, two ways of looking at things. What was perceived as competing perspectives brought a rise to a whole new way of thinking at the world and new definitions of art, idealized realism. Idealized realism, while at first, and everything we know about the two seems far-fetched, and as it shouldn't work. But to again break a deeply philosophical breakdown into smaller, simpler terms, is similar to the color wheel. Definitions of light wavelengths, opposite each other on the spectrum, or opposite each other on the color wheel, are considered complementary colors and are aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Much in the same way, idealism and realism challenge each other and complement each other in a way to make a brand new form of art. You're probably like, what the hell does this have to do with video games? French art from the 1840s, Hinduistic philosophies, the hell is he talking about? So let's take a step back and look at some video games that released in the last few years and how they approach realism. The channel Any Austin has a fantastic breakdown of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare mission Clean House that I highly suggest you check out. In his video, he points out a lot of the crazy attention to detail that was done in Clean House to make the mission captivatingly immersive, as well as he touches on some topics we'll talk about a little later in terms of gamifying or using video game scale. But for right now, we'll focus on some broader concepts of the art. I highly suggest you watch his video, as it's a great look at some similar and smaller details in the game that people wouldn't typically look at. Clean House is a mission that is routinely praised for its attention to detail. The complex, realistic take on a real military operation. As Any Austin points out, the developers talked about how they wanted to model a realistic house at 1-to-1 scale to capture realism and maximize the impact. So let's take a look at the layout of Clean House with a closer lens. The first introduction we have to the house is the kitchen. Going up a ladder and through the open window, we enter and immediately are greeted with an open layout to a kitchen island in the middle of the room. This always struck me as a little strange, but we can get back to that detail a little later. You then enter through the dining room and take out the first targets of the mission. Meeting with the strike team entering through the front door, you make your way up the stairs, and from here, you work your way through the different floors of the house, eliminating targets on your way to the attic, where you find the plans for the attack and the mission concludes. The mission is incredibly atmospheric. On the surface, it would, and reasonably could, be assumed that it is realism. Everything looks and feels like it is real in the moment, and what feels as a high-stakes mission with you on the edge of your seat, the night vision, the constant threat of what's around the next corner. The developers took great care and consideration to make you feel as though you were there. But all that time and consideration, why would they stop short of having two perfectly matching bookshelves? At random times, almost nonsensical decor in the house. Or as Any Awesome points out, all of the garbage cans being empty with so many people in the house. The reason for these questions, among many other things you can find in Modern Warfare, as contrary as it sounds, they weren't actually shooting for realism. To explain what I mean, let's take a look at another game, Grand Theft Auto 5. The comments I'm about to make about Grand Theft Auto 5, you could probably attribute to any Rockstar game, as they're pretty good at what this concept is, and we're not going to turn this into a 2-hour-long video on the philosophy of Rockstar Games' art direction, and I'll bring it down to just one game we're going to talk about. But that's a great future video. GTA 5 is set in Los Santos, a fictional version of the real-life city of Los Angeles, in a greater area of Lower California outside of Los Angeles. Rockstar, especially with their latest release to date being Red Dead Redemption 2, takes great pride and consideration into taking and creating immersive, captivating worlds that just suck you in. Everything from the sound design, the layouts, the driving, the guns, the visuals, the color, everything about the title demonstrates this commitment. But Los Santos isn't Los Angeles. Los Santos looks, feels, and sounds like Los Angeles. If you don't take the time to compare the cities, you could reasonably be fooled without context that they are one and the same. Every prominent landmark is seemingly in the right place and in the game. Every highway that the city is represented, the iconic skyscrapers of downtown Los Angeles, LAX Airport, the Santa Monica Pier, Venice Beach, the local shops, Paramount Studios, Beverly Hills, everything feels right and where it's supposed to be. But when you take a step and you look back at the real map of Los Angeles, it's not. Grand Theft Auto doesn't even get the locations of a lot of the major landmarks correct. In their version, the Hollywood sign, for example, isn't even close to the same spot geographically to the real-life counterpart, and is on a totally different mountain. Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, LAX, the representation of different neighborhoods in it are entirely the wrong spots. Iconic landmarks of the city are seemingly completely misplaced. But why does it feel so right when we play the game? Why does Clean House feel so real? Both games, and generally, games in general, as a whole for the most part, adopt and use the concept of idealized realism. They are making an experience that feels and plays like mimicking realism, but it is more meant to capture the idea of something rather than the true form of it. Rockstar isn't trying to recreate Los Angeles. Rockstar is trying to capture the essence and the feeling of being in Los Angeles, as portrayed by the film that is, or films or multiple different properties that it's drawing inspiration from. They aren't concerned with does the 405 actually come into the city this way, or where LAX should be in an appropriate approximation to the city. Rockstar took the principles and ideas of what we know when we picture Los Angeles in our minds and used that to demonstrate a feeling. So let's take a step back and let's do an example. If I wanted to recreate Florida, but I wanted to set the story in some nondescript, vaguely Florida town that is not a major city, I would first need to discern that what I would need to make Florida feel like Florida. If you close your eyes and you are not from Florida, I would imagine you thought of a few different things based on the media that you watch. If you take a moment, just think about it for a couple seconds. I can guarantee you probably thought of palm trees, you thought of the beach, you thought of beach homes, the ocean, Everglades, alligators, crazy people, either the high-rise buildings of Miami's shoreline, Spanish colonial architecture, the 1980s, the movie Scarface, etc., whatever. The list goes on. But you were able to create a very clear visual representation in your mind. Even if you have never been to Florida, you have something that looks like Florida in your mind based on the media that you consumed that shaped that perception. That mental image you created, that is your idealized version of Florida. Now, that version may not be correct. It very well could be, it could not be. There's no way to know for sure, because we don't know what's in your mind, we don't know what's in other people's minds. But that perception, that idealized recollection of concepts, is what companies like Rockstar use when creating their game worlds to create a sense of familiarity to the player. This familiarity, based on perceptive collective understanding of what commonplaces, is the very backbone of artistic design in video games. When making a video game, we often have to do a gameplay first mentality and let the art supplement the gameplay. In doing so, we often, whether sometimes purposefully or not, limit ourselves to the bounds of trying to create the ideas of spaces rather than creating a realistic space. But do so in such a way that it could be assumed as realistic. As mentioned in the Modern Warfare interview Annie Austin brought up, gamifying spaces is a common result of gameplay taking precedent over realism. With a realistic lens, those spaces are nonsensical. Larger-than-life doors, hallways so wide you could fit a truck in, places that should be cluttered being open and easily accessible to walk in. But when we play games, we don't ever notice. Games adopt the principles and ideas over realism because it is noticeable and we perceive it as being correct. I'll give one final example I bet you never noticed in the 2013 game The Last of Us. When you are playing it again, or any game like it, try to make sense of where all the doors are in a room and where they go, especially in the original version of the game. It will surprise you how little they make sense. Or pay attention to how thick traffic paint is in later sections of the game. As well, when you see destruction in The Last of Us, or frankly any game, try to see if the destroyed pieces are actually where they're supposed to be, or if the developers, quote unquote, forgot to put them there to make gameplay more easier to play in. With that, my name is Jake, and thank you for watching.